The rain has stopped overnight, and the sky is an array of different shaped clouds that no doubt all have names but don't need them. Just because we know what something is called doesn't mean that we understand it anymore. The girls are going crazy this morning in their flight around St. George's Tower, excited about something or other. It's not a murmuration exactly, it's too imprecise for that, but it's welcome nevertheless, and reminds me of my guitar playing, more enthusiasm than technique. And like music, the birds come in waves that fill and empty the space around the church, and as I look again, they're gone. I feel blessed to have these birds in Ramsgate. The gulls, the pigeons and the black crows, the magpies and the jays, the hedge sparrows and the starlings, and the robins and wrens, and the blackbirds, and their girlfriends, the brown birds. In London, the sparrows have virtually disappeared because of noise and air pollution and domestic cats. I guess most of the wildlife here in Ramsgate is in the sea, but we know so little about that. And we assume that sea creatures aren't that intelligent until you watch the movie about the octopus. I do see the odd fox, which I always enjoy, usually on the beach. I remember once meeting a man who told me that foxes were evil. They'll tear a cat in two. And I said, well, they are wild animals, mate. And the same goes for the gulls. Many people in Ramsgate despise them, and I wonder how that can be. I mean, their cry is noisy, hysterical even, and they can be quite assertive. Like the time when Dive bombed me as I walked up the high street, which I thought was a bit ungrateful, given I'm on their side. And they can steal sandwiches from children, or chips from people outside fish and chip shops. I love that thing where if people want the gulls to go away, they just throw chips at them. I'm standing by the fish van one day with this woman telling me how evil they are because they shit on her balcony. And I'm looking at this girl who's waiting for me to give it a whelk. And I can see how perfect this creature is, how intelligent and how beautiful. It's perfect white, like it had just come out of the wash, with delightful black tips to its feathers. Its form is so dense, almost box-shaped, but my God, can they fly. And I'd like to pet it, but I'm wary of that powerful yellow beak that widens a little at the end and has perfect twin holes to breathe. Hail, O gull, you are truly magnificent. The gull's cries dominate this town. It was the same when Vincent van Gogh was here, when Wellington's troops were embarking for Waterloo, and when the ancient Britons lined the cliffs to watch Julius Caesar's army landing in the bay. And it was the same millions of years before that. Across the road at the car spray shop, the gutter has been running all night, and there's rubbish strewn over the road. In the 1960s, when the council decided to demolish half the street, it's not clear why. I think it was part of the slum clearance policy in those days, otherwise known as destroying anything old. They granted planning for an industrial unit to be built where a row of sea captains' cottages stood. Because the owner had a visit from the council after someone complained about his rubbish, he installed a camera in the hope of identifying who it was. And one day when I was taking some snaps for my Airbnb page, he confronted me and accused me of the terrible crime of reporting him to the council. I told him I wouldn't do that before speaking to him first, but he'd already decided that I was the culprit. In his view, reporting someone to the council was a far greater crime than keeping everybody awake at night or dumping rubbish on the street. He shaves his head and cuts a pretty macho figure striding around with his shirt off. His voice is so high, it's like he's inhaled helium from a party balloon, which is in such stark contrast to his macho physicality that he becomes like a cartoon character. And when he speaks, his mouth becomes a machine gun, disgorging words that are impossible to understand. But it's not the words that are important, but something much more subtle. I've noticed, and this is when he's talking to people like the dustman, for example, when he actually wants them to take the rubbish away, even though they're not contracted to do so. His outpouring of senseless information is a distraction tactic, like when you talk about the weather or the pandemic or something. It's not really what they're talking about. It's as if he's trying to mesmerize people. Anyway, it's very unpleasant to witness. It's a bit like a poisonous snake hypnotizing its prey before it sinks its fangs in. It's got to the stage where I don't talk to him anymore. He's always going to think that it was me who called the council on him. Sometimes he would arrive at 10 p.m. and work until 5 a.m. using power tools. And then when he left, there'd be lots of revving and opening and closing of the garage doors and banging of car doors. I did complain to him about that, and his response was, "I don't give a fuck," but said in such a high voice it didn't have the impact that he had hoped. I'm at the house doing the changeover for the next Airbnb guest, and I go around the corner to put the rubbish in a dumpster. Turning back into Paradise, I spot a car full of young people parked right outside the car spray shop and say, "Are you my Airbnb guests?" And they say, "Yes, are you Robert?" And we greet each other with smiles, and I tell them where they can park, but I can see that they want to unload because they're basically opposite the house, when suddenly our macho man appears and tells us that they have to move. And I say, "Don't worry, they're moving," but he obviously wants to make a deal out of it. And by this time the girls are looking a little scared, because this is a man with his shirt off, being a little aggressive, and I'm trying to pretend that there isn't a problem, which is always stressful. And meanwhile, Macho Man keeps striding off and then striding back and being more confrontational, and more so probably because I still look calm. And then he starts quizzing me about some other car, and I say, "I don't know who that belongs to." And he strides off and checks his CCTV and strides back again and puts his face in my face and tells me that the man from the car went into my house. And I say, I still don't know who that was, and in any case, I wasn't here this morning. By the time we get inside, I feel pretty stressed, and it stays with me all weekend, and I realise I drink a lot more than usual, and generally feel unhappy. I recognise the same feeling from school when I was bullied, or was accused of something I didn't do, and it amazes me that as you get older, nothing really changes. You're still vulnerable to exactly the same insecurities that you were as a child. You have more experience and can tell yourself that everything is okay, but those feelings remain. The memories are somehow embedded in your cells. The other people on my road steer clear of Macho Man, and they're basically scared of him. The old couple next door are so charming and full of smiles when they see him, but I know that actually they hate his guts. But I can't do that. I can't pretend, not even for a quiet life. I don't enjoy dealing with the council because they say they want to help, and they don't really. And I don't want to call the police as I don't trust them. And it's probably because, like Macho Man and the nature of their job, they assume that everyone is lying to them. I haven't had any dealings with the police here in Ramsgate, I'm glad to say. And to be fair, there aren't many of them on the street anymore because of the cuts, and in any case they're based in Margate. I did see a couple of PCs in town once. Both of them had rolled up sleeves revealing heavy hipster tattoos, which is something you would never have seen when I was young. If I spot the police walking towards me, I cross the road, and people would no doubt say that I must be doing something wrong, or thinking of doing something wrong. But the truth is, I'm scared of them. The police automatically assume the worst in you, that you're going to lie to them, and this has always confused me, because lying takes such a lot of effort, and personally, I can't be bothered. You can clearly see a policeman trying to read you, even if you're asking something completely innocent, like directions to somewhere. And if you tell a policeman the truth, beware of the consequences. Years ago, I was attacked by someone having a psychotic episode in London, and he tried to break my fingers by grabbing my hands, and I just managed to get free and tried to slap him and missed. So then he rammed me with his big bald head and cut it on my belt buckle, and it started dripping with blood, and then he got someone to call the police. And when I admitted that I'd tried to defend myself, they sent him to A&E, and they handcuffed me and put me in a cell all night. I'm curious to know how the police in Ramsgate investigate crime. I went into the station once and tried to interview the sergeant, but heard nothing back. It turns out there isn't a sergeant. The loss of the lead from the lift roof on the East Cliff is a good example. It would have taken several men some considerable time to remove it and take it away in a truck. They would have needed ladders and hammers and bolsters, etc. And it's difficult to believe that nobody saw anything or heard anything. It's directly opposite the Albion House Hotel. In 2004, the library burnt down, which was built with money donated by Scottish-American businessman and philanthropist Andrew Carnegie. During the last 18 years of his life, he gave away what today would be $5.2 billion to charities, foundations and universities, 90% of his fortune. His 1889 article proclaiming the gospel of wealth called on the rich to use their wealth to improve society, and it stimulated a wave of philanthropy, which incredibly included the library at Ramsgate. It's undoubtedly one of the town's most iconic buildings, and the arson attack destroyed many important books and documents relating to the history of the town. Simultaneously, there was an arson attack on the Public Registry Office on Ellington Road, so someone was interested in destroying records, but no one was ever arrested. People in the town say that the police knew who it was and couldn't prove it, or didn't wish to. The council were going to pull down the library, but there was a public outcry, and eventually the interior was remodelled and the neo-Georgian facade retained. And amazingly, the building wasn't turned into flats. I'm out for a walk in the snow with my new friend, the Erotic Photographer, that I'd met at the pop-up gallery on Addington Street. I guess I haven't seen that many people during lockdown, and I talk too much, and I'm a little excited. Is this a date, or are we just hanging out? I wondered to myself, not really knowing which I'd prefer. You have a girlfriend, says my head, but I might never see her again, it adds, changing its mind. In any case, my relationship with my girlfriend has been under strain for almost a year now, since I went out to stay with her in the Catskill Mountains at the beginning of lockdown. Having me and her friends from Brooklyn in her new house for 3 months pushed her over the edge, and I was the one that caught the flak. In the end, because of a string of flights cancelled, I stayed for 5 months, but when I left, I knew I might never see her again. I couldn't really tell what my friend, the Erotic Photographer, was thinking. About me, I mean. She didn't give much away. In fact, she was measured and polite. She's from London, so we understood each other, but just before we parted, she announced with a certain amount of glee that she was training to become a dominatrix. Oh, that will be fun, I said, like I was volunteering to join in. But the prospect of being tied up and whipped filled me with so much trepidation that I stopped in at the supermarket on the way home and picked up 2 bottles of red and a Havana cigar. They say that people who are dominating in life like to be dominated sexually, and it's the same for people who are submissive in life, which is the category I probably fit into. At home I cooked and told myself it was Sunday lunch and I deserved some wine, and there's nothing wrong with the occasional cigar, but when you smoke it like a cigarette, inhaling every draw, and I don't even remember drinking the settled bottle of wine. Perhaps the encounter with the dominatrix had reminded me of being at prep school, having my pyjama bottoms pulled down and being beaten with a bamboo cane. And there's nothing sexy about that, is there? Thursday morning, named after the Norse god Thor, associated with thunder, lightning and fertility, and with his iron hammer banging inside my head, I stagger down the steep staircase, my legs still stiff from sleep, to put on some coffee. It's not quite light yet, and cold, and I fill a hot water bottle, put on a jumper, and climb back into bed. I'm not going to turn the central heating on and heat the whole house just for me. There's no insulation, and in any case, I don't like it hot. There's no point pretending it's summer, and the thought of the gas central heating blasting away in all those houses in the northern hemisphere is kind of obscene. I look out of my window at the snow and the birds, and I think they must be cold, but then again they look perfectly happy. I haven't heard one of them complaining. I'm ready to start writing. I have a hot water bottle against my thigh, a mug of organic Nicaraguan coffee next to me on my bedside table, and my MacBook Pro on my lap. But for some reason I'm still not happy, and it takes me a moment to work out what it is. My fucking back hurts, and I know why. It's my mattress. This mattress is the most expensive mattress I have ever bought. It cost me £700. I know you can spend more, but I think it's a lot for a mattress, and it's only 2 years old. I should have known that any mattress that boasts it's made of silk and cashmere is going to be rubbish. It's fine if you're lying down flat on your back, but if you move or try and sit up in bed, no matter how many pillows you stack behind you, your arse keeps sliding down the bed. There's no support. The mattress has lost it. I wonder if it's still under guarantee, my Yorkshire thriftiness demands to know. I googled the bed company I bought it from. I had decided to support the local economy and buy one from the shop in town rather than buying online. I dial the landline and I get through to a mobile and someone answers it. The man sounds delighted to hear from me, presumably hoping to make another sale. But when I explain the problem, his enthusiasm diminishes somewhat. But he agrees to come round and have a look. Result, I think to myself, and I manage to bang out a few paragraphs until my back starts to ache so much I have to get up. A couple of weeks of aching back later, I dial the number again, and just as I'm beginning to think that he's avoiding me, he picks up. And true to his word, he turns up at the allotted time to inspect the mattress. Now what I haven't told you is that this has all happened before, after the first mattress I bought from him collapsed. So there is a little bit of tension in the air. And he's now on the defensive, and he has to prove in some way that it's my fault. I tell him that I'm away a lot, which is true. But what I don't tell him is that I have Airbnb guests, and all of them are like doing it in my bed. On the other hand, there's nothing in the warranty that says single occupancy only and strictly no fucking, so I don't feel I'm being dishonest. He takes a lot of photos and says he'll pass them on to the manufacturers and see what they say. As he's leaving, I remind him that my contract is with him and not them, but I feel I may have gone too far, and he leaves with a long face, the cogs in his head visibly turning, wondering how to satisfy me and at the same time make a profit. He is in business after all, whereas I just think he should help me out because that's what I would do in his situation. But the mantra in business is that you make a profit, and my lack of interest in that is why I don't have a beautiful house and a beautiful wife. Actually, I do have a beautiful house. It's just a lot more modest than the castle my ego told me I should be living in. And I would have had a beautiful wife if things hadn't gone wrong between us in lockdown. Is the selfish gene really integral to our survival? I wonder what Darwin would have thought about that. When he spoke about survival of the fittest, he didn't mean the strongest always wins. He meant those that can fit best into their environment, those that can adapt, will be successful. Richard Dawkins' famous book, The Selfish Gene, encouraged people to believe that humanity is only altruistic for selfish reasons. But Dawkins was actually describing gene selection rather than human behaviour. Mind you, his view that religion is unscientific because the existence of God cannot be proved seems a little facile to me. Surely there are some things that we can accept without proving them. Otherwise, what is real becomes extremely limited, and our view of reality must necessarily change as new discoveries are made. The way I see it is that the universe is so complex and vast that you couldn't possibly understand it, and religious dogma is silly given that each religion states that the other ones have got it wrong. The word God, in Old Germanic, means to seek, which makes sense to me both spiritually and scientifically. And we're not seeking the truth in everything, and whether you do it with religion or science, it's immaterial. When people in this country say they don't believe in the old man sitting on a cloud, I always think it's childish, because it's only a visual interpretation of God, by Michelangelo, I think, as opposed to actually being God. And how could you paint a picture of something as ineffable as God? Granted, it's a pretty wild claim that the Earth was created in 7 days, and yet on the other hand, it depends how long the days were. I like Taoism because it describes a universe where everything is constantly shifting from one opposing force to another, and if you think you understand the Tao, then it's not the Tao. But my back still hurts. I check my emails and see one from the senior conservation officer at the district council that I've been trying to speak to now for months. My first email no doubt put her off. I was trying to get information about the Dutch gabled house that had been demolished at the end of my road, and I'd said, "Don't worry, I haven't got a vendetta against the council," which she obviously read as, "I've got a vendetta against the council," and she'd gone quiet. I chased her up by email 2 or 3 times and sent her texts and left a voicemail. And when she eventually worked out that I wasn't going away, she replied and told me that she'd forwarded my inquiry to the press office. She's not the only one. I've emailed several of her colleagues and they didn't reply either. It's a pretty good strategy actually, and I would adopt it myself if it wasn't bad manners. And after all, it's what they get paid for. On my way back from my swim, I drop into the deli for a loaf of sourdough and grab a copy of our local rag, the Ramsgate Recorder. I thumb through it when I get home over a cup of coffee. I like this paper, not just because it's free, but because the articles are pretty well written. That in itself is not surprising, but it wouldn't surprise me if the writing was terrible, like most of the other freebies. Anyways, as I'm thumbing through it for anything of interest that I can nick from my radio programme, I can see that they have some ideas I already had, which is a bit of a cheek. But to be fair, there isn't that much going on in Ramsgate, and what there is, that appeals to the DFL readership at least, is inevitably going to end up in the Ramsgate Recorder. I've seen art by this local artist, Mr. Teargas, who's basically the Banksy of Ramsgate. I bet he hates that, although he loves it. Like the lettering on the building near the Quick Fit garage that says, "Superheroes wear masks," and the doors on the side of the world's most disgusting toilet, Leopold Street car park, that say, "Ramsgate." His messages are full of hope. The cover of the Ramsgate Recorder this month shows another of his images, an open door on the main sands, with a sign on the sand next to it that says, "This way." Yes, I'm liking Mr. Teargas. He's looking to the future of Ramsgate and all its unknown possibilities, and it offers a sense of hope. I'd like to talk to him, if I could ever find him. My friend the Polish lady calls me and asks if I want to go for a walk. She's not the lady from the deli, but someone I met who was looking for a room to rent. She didn't take it, but she was obviously interested in becoming friends. So we set off for our walk, but it's not long before she starts to complain that we've taken the long way round, even though at this stage we haven't actually decided where we're going. And just as we get to the sea, she says she's lost her hat, and so we retrace our steps and try and find it. Eventually we give up and head back through the park and on towards Broadstairs. It's lunchtime by now, and we're getting hungry. And instead of getting battered soft-shelled crab from Wyatt and Jones, which I like, that's soft-shelled crab and the restaurant, but didn't wish to pay for, we instead get fish and chips at a local chip shop. I leave my friend in the queue whilst I go and buy beer. The Broadstairs off-licence has changed hands and now looks like a New York microbrewery, with colourfully designed cans of IPA stacked in display cases against the back wall. I choose one with a picture of a drunken sailor on the front, and another with what looks like Dumbo the elephant on Quaaludes, both by a new hipster brewery in Deal. I go back to meet my friend, who has bagged a bench by the front. I ask her which beer she prefers, and then I see that the one with the drunken elephant is 8.4%, whilst the drunken sailor is only 3.2%, though judging by the image on the can, he must have had more than one. She tells me she doesn't mind, but I don't want to give her the strong one, as at 8.4% it's probably undrinkable, and I don't fancy carrying her home, so I hand her the drunken sailor. After a couple of gulps of the super brew, my face starts to go red, and my heart's beating like I've just snorted a gram of speed, when my phone rings. It's the guy from the bed shop.
Hello?
Now, conversations with him have always been a little awkward, and I'm now somewhat compromised, having had several large gulps of the super strong beer. It's evident that he doesn't entirely trust me about what I'd done to the mattress that meant I needed to return it. I told him about the radio programme, and that I'd give him a positive mention, and he said he'd done radio interviews before. But that didn't get him to like me, or to drop the price, and so I added that I could always give him a negative mention, which was met with a similar level of apathy. I reminded him that I'd found the same mattress cheaper online, and that I'd send him the link, but he tells me not to bother, and to call him when I've had a chance to think about it. He's much better at this than I am. He's had a lot more practice, and he doesn't care for my highbrow values of community or being on the radio. And so I drink the rest of my beer and smoke one of my friend's cigarettes, even though I don't smoke cigarettes. But she's more than happy to offer me one, because she doesn't want to get lung cancer on her own. We head back to Ramsgate along the beach, and she's quizzing me about the mattress, and my head feels like it's literally going to explode, and I really wish that I'd gone for a pee in Broadstairs. We're walking under the cliffs when she suddenly spots a large hole, not a cave exactly, but a gaping hole in the chalk with a line running through it vertically. Look, she says, taking a picture of it with her phone. It looks just like, I don't know the word in English. She starts Googling the Polish word and the English translation, which I already know because I know what's coming, and she suddenly exclaims, vulva, which I pretend I didn't hear, and then she says it again, several times in fact, just to make sure I get the message. Once I'm home, I begin to feel normal again, and as a special treat, I run an extremely hot bath, thinking it will help my aches and pains, and also warm me up so I don't have to put the central heating on. Getting in the tub is exactly what it's like cooking a lobster. As I lower my body into the volcanic magma, I start to emit a series of squeaky, simpering noises as my skin flushes a deep pink colour. It's so hot, in fact, I'm not able to move, and I bear it for as long as I can before I reach over and turn on the cold tap. The flow of cold water is momentarily a delight, but as soon as the heat is gone, I lose interest and get out. Burns to my legs and torso aside, the therapy has worked, and I feel quite relaxed. Even my stiff neck feels better, which is an unexpected bonus, given it wasn't even in the water. My body has retained the heat like a hot brick, and I dab myself with a towel and get into bed and settle down to watch a movie. But it's not long before I hear my phone ping, and it's a photo message from my friend. It's the gaping great vulva. The next picture is me on the beach that she has somehow animated to make me sing Piaf's Je ne regrette rien, which for some reason fills me with such horror that I try quickly to silence it, pause it, or delete it, and then in the end have to turn my phone off. I decide to block her number, which is harsh, I know, but on the other hand, if I have that kind of reaction to something that was intended to make me smile, it's just not meant to be. Something about it throws me into a depression. I can't even enjoy a well-intentioned joke. I feel separate from the world and from everybody. I may as well throw myself off the cliff, the one sporting the enormous vulva. Perhaps that's why I've come here. But I know this feeling. It's the voice of Thanatos in my head, the self-destructive thinking and behaviour that I've known since I was a small child. But my daughter's coming for the weekend, and it'd be pretty upsetting for her to be told by the neighbours that I'd met with an accident, or indeed come across my distorted corpse on the beach with seaweed sticking out of my mouth. I can feel that I'm heading for a dark period, which is usually spurred on by impending financial disaster, where I can't pay my bills and I go around the house wondering what I can sell. But I'm saved by an email from my Tai Chi teacher asking me to sign up for the next block of lessons, and I don't have to think about it. And I send him the money, even though I can't afford it, and I resolve to start the 6:30 a.m. Zazen meditation that another friend recommended. Basically, the choice is, or at least I erroneously believe that the only choice I have, is either to destroy myself the slow way by drinking red wine and smoking cigars, or the fast way, which is jumping off a cliff. Or I can do Tai Chi and Zazen, swim in the sea, and write my book, and if I'm really good, perhaps I'll even get a girlfriend who actually loves me. It's a no-brainer really, and in any case I've already tried the slow method, and it always ends badly. And having watched both of my parents writhing around in bed in fear of death, brought on by smoking and drinking and worrying about money, I don't fancy joining them. I feel better about myself immediately. I've asserted myself with Thanatos, the god of self-destruction and death, and at least for now, I've chosen life. I set my alarm for 6 a.m, but wake closer to 5. I go and make coffee and get my meditation cushion that I ordered from the Amazon Basic range, and I log on. Looks like there are 3 people sitting this morning, and they're already on their cushions waiting to start. 2 of them are in a room that looks like a zendo in Japan, but I know it's actually their house in Canterbury. They're the man and wife team who lead the meditation. The other sitter is a younger man who looks Japanese, but turns out to be from Korea. They all gesu, which is a kind of greeting where you clasp your hands together and bow, and the meditation leader sounds the gong to begin. I commit myself to 50 minutes of sitting still and doing nothing. I'm not ready to do full lotus. I'm not even ready to do half lotus. So I opt for the easier Burmese sitting position, with my ankles laying flat on the floor while I try and clear my mind. My first challenge isn't the constant stream of thought, but keeping my back straight for any length of time. If I don't, it starts to ache and my legs stiffen up. Well, I'm not going to be able to keep this up for 50 minutes, my head tells me. And then the itching starts, my nose and then my eyebrow, and I see how long I can bear it before I can't bear it anymore, and I'm compelled to scratch. I wonder if anyone will notice if I scratch my nose. They'll no doubt judge me. I can't see anyone else scratching. I imagine, if you're fully present, in a deep mind meditation, then you don't itch, or get an aching back, or have one of your feet go to sleep. It's just all bliss. Well, perhaps. Can there really be pleasure without pain? I'm not sure you're even supposed to enjoy it, being a Japanese discipline. But I probably just made that up based on the stories I heard about the Japanese in the Second World War from my headmaster at prep school, who was captured and tortured by them. No wonder he used to beat us with a length of bamboo. But now I'm thinking it must be time to swap my legs around, and that thought fills my head with thoughts, and I start fighting with them, and suddenly I'm in hell. I try and put my attention on my breath, a big in-breath from my gut, and a long out-breath that seems to last forever. And then the thoughts slowly begin to subside, and I resign to sit there until the end of time. And suddenly, and most unexpectedly, I experience a sensation of orgasmic bliss. But as soon as I observe that I'm enjoying it, I'm drawn back right out of it, and it evaporates, leaving me with nothing. Which is perfect, because nothing is exactly what I'm looking for. Then the gong sounds for 50 minutes, and the end of the meditation. And I can't believe I've been sitting there for 50 minutes. That actually feels like 10 minutes. And I'm happy and glad that I got up at 5 a.m. for that. The others say their morning greetings to one another, and I do the same. But I don't know what to say, and I say goodbye and close the laptop. But over the next few days of practice, the issues with the aching back diminish. And if I need to scratch, I just scratch. And I have to say by Friday, I'm feeling so calm, I'm almost stoned. But Thanatos says I need a Havana cigar and a pint of ale on the deck at Wetherspoons in the sunshine to make me happy. Well, why not? As long as it's not too often, I say to myself, knowing that that's not true.